Hello, everyone. Not really sure what happened with our link, but we did email it all out to you, so we'll hope that people pop in as time goes on. We are on session 4, which means that we are basically looking at planning for sort of the rest of February, March, April, and then we'll meet again to wind up the year for June. So our session today, really, as we had talked about in the last session, we would focus on geometry, measurement, understanding more measurement than anything. From a perspective of the teacher side, just a refresher of what we need to be aware of, where some of the common mistakes are that students make as they start to learn about measurement. Looking at maybe some assessment possibilities just through an engaging activity that the students can do. And then we are now moving at that midway point in our year to mastery. So we had targeted by end of January that we would have mastered our systems to 5 in all different aspects, and now working towards our learner outcome, which is the mastery to 10. So let's get started. I'm going to begin with our Treaty 6 acknowledgement. And this one comes from Bev Facey High School in Sherwood Park. We acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, traditional meeting ground and gathering place and traveling route to Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. And many of you will be coming from Treaty 7 and Treaty 8 as well. And we acknowledge all of those First Nations peoples whose footsteps have marked the ways previous to us being here. Okay, so we're going to start as we always have, and that would be to just review where we're going. And you'll notice that we don't have a lot of yellow anymore in our year at a glance because we're kind of done with the bridging part to 5. And now really trying to solidify the understanding to moving towards 10. And so when you see the outcomes that are showing up both in number for February, for March, for April, you're not really seeing new numbers show up. You're seeing all of 1.2 again. So children investigate quantities to 10. So they're regrouping, grouping, decomposing, composing. They're counting on from values. So they understand the principles of cardinality, they understand the principles of one-to-one correspondence. So we're just taking the same outcomes that they've already seen working on 5, and many of your students will be on that already, and working on mastery to 10. So this is what you're seeing, 1.2 B and E. That's all of those understandings that are listed here. Remember, that's what the bullets are. We also have students investigate quantities to 10 for subitizing. And so we want them to, they have to master to 5, but they can definitely be grouping and visualizing them to 10. We want students to be able to see them without having to count them. That's that subitizing. And we want them to be able to relate to a number for a need or a purpose, not just counting 6 bears. But why would I have maybe 6 pennies that I might count? What might I do with 6 pennies? I might use money to buy something. So it's understanding the purpose of having a count and where does that go? Do I have enough for sharing? Do I have enough to put on my plate if I wanted 6 French fries? Like that kind of conversation is the piece that we want to have here at 1.4. And that's kind of moving in towards the April, May, June, is really giving application value to what they've already learned. We're also bringing back patterns. I know many of you introduced patterns right from the beginning, and that's fine. We said everybody can do their own thing at any time, and a lot of you wanted to do number and patterns at the same place, which makes total sense. But now is an opportunity for us to go back and revisit them. And now that I'm working to values to 10, I could also change not 10 items in a core, but I can change the size of my elements. I can change the size of my core and work from there. And just having a larger span that I can have in my pattern where they would be counting. Measurement, we're also exploring size through direct comparison. So we're looking at things like longer, shorter, heavier, lighter, those comparative kinds of language. We're not worried about a ruler here per se. We're not looking at them saying this is 6 centimeters. That comes later on and not in their grade. But we want them to be able to compare things directly so that they can look at something and say this one would be probably heavier than this one would be. Why would you think that, right? What is your thinking behind your reasoning that you have? When we look down here, we also have the geometric attributes. So shape is structured two-dimensionally. We had focused on 2D, now sliding into 3D as well. And so again, we're talking about what are the attributes that they have. It could be sorted by color, could be sorted by has edges on it, has smooth sides on it, whatever the attributes are of the items that you're giving them. And then again, we talk about measurement coming back again in March, revisiting it in April. So it's an ongoing as we go out, and as the weather gets nicer, they can go outside and they can start doing some comparative language out there. Okay, but in particular, the 1.2 size may refer to only one measurable attribute at a time. The size of two objects can be directly compared, and the size of an object can be described in relation to purpose or need. So again, why would I have a great big bowl? I might mix salad in there versus a small bowl, okay, a 3D object. Just again, the application. Why are there things that are different sizes? And then we see the same revisit. Time was something that was ongoing, and we haven't changed that. It's become part of our daily routine. So let's have a look a little bit more specifically. I'm not going to go through each month, but what we'll do is just review the outcomes, because remember that you're only seeing this part, the understanding, in the year at a glance. That is the bullet that is in there. And so we still need to unpack the knowledge, skills, and procedures, keeping in mind that we are now targeting for the learner outcome, which says investigating quantities to 10. So we're looking at objects, pictures, words, numbers, every combination that we can have of different things so that they see 10 in a variety of different ways. All of the different understandings. There's your B to E that we were talking about to start with. We always said that A was kind of the initial piece, that stable order of rote counting of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They kind of needed to get that really well solidified before we started to jump into a lot of the other pieces. So those are the pieces that we want to ensure that we're there for. Hey, Carol, welcome. All right, so let's carry on. We're going to look at 1.3. And with 1.3, we want to ensure that we have just a good review again of the quantities to 10. We're looking at comparative language, and this will play into even our measurement unit, where we're talking about less, more, enough, not enough. If we were sharing something equally, if I was going to give, popcorn pieces to you, do we have the same amounts and not the same amounts? Those are the pieces that we want. Yep, thanks so much, Carol. We sent out a new link. I'm not sure why it died, but I just thought I'll start recording in the meantime, but we'll keep going and hopefully other people will jump in here as well. So just reviewing where we're at for the year at a glance right now. So our KN2, children interpret compositions of quantity, that's at composing, decomposing. So that's where that match would be very helpful to have that in our realm of things that we're going to be doing. And we want to make sure too that students are really sound in 5 before we launch into 10 in this one. So again, we would build on those pieces. We would build on the fact that we know from 5, and then can we count up from there in our composition and decomposition pieces. So what I wanted to do today was spend just a little bit of time on measurement. And that reasoning is not so much because we are actually doing physical measurement with the students of a ruler or that we're weighing things, but we're asking them to have comparative language. But this is really the time for us just to refresh our memory too of what are the things that cause children to kind of fall off the rails when it comes to measurement. Where are the common mistakes that we see? So I've used a couple of screenshots from Marion Small's book. I'll share that one with you at the end. But there were a couple of pieces in her principles that I just wanted to refresh our memory. Not all of them, but some of them I thought were really relevant for the kinds of things we're asking the kindergarten children to do. So when we're talking about comparative language, very often we want students to make sure that they're paying clear attention to the object that they're measuring. And so in this case, I can see big and I can see slightly smaller. But if I'm really paying attention to it as well, I will notice that the rim on this one is quite narrow, whereas this one has a lot of substance to it. So it would be not unreasonable to say that the yellow one is bigger than the green one, but the green one might be heavier than the yellow one, depending on obviously on what they were made of. But just that they're astute enough to pick up on some of those pieces and that we point those kinds of things out to them when we're doing those kinds of comparative language. Familiarity with certain measurement references also helps them. So do they have a clue as to how big their finger is? And not that we want them to know that they have to know 1 centimeter right now, but do they know that their pencil is about 1 finger width wide, or that their eraser is 2 finger widths wide, so that they have a starting point for reference? And is that a small amount or is that a big amount? When we're talking about using a non-standard measure, and that would be very typical of a kindergarten student, where we might say, you know, about how tall are you and what in the room is about your height? So they could walk around and try and find something that's around their height. I don't know. It doesn't matter whether they're a meter and a half. It doesn't matter what their height is. It's comparative language to themselves. So in this case, their body becomes the measuring tool. But then also we want to have that conversation with them is, you know, how do you think we could measure the length of our room? You know, and some kids have said in the past, well, we could lay all of us from one end to the other, like we could lay down on our backs and go, you know, head and feet. And then we have a conversation of, that's a good idea, but what do you think might be a problem with that? You know, do we have everybody exactly the same height? Do you think it would give us the same measurement, or are some of us really short and some of us really tall? So we talk about that so that they have a reason to think about when they pick their tool. And then picking the right tool. You know, we might say to them, well, we have this big stick in the room and we might lay the stick down on the floor. Do you think we could use a paper clip? And they might say, yeah, and we could try that. Well, I wouldn't say no, it wouldn't be practical. We would try it with them. And then just eventually they're going to say, oh, this is going to take forever. Yeah, it is. So maybe this isn't the right tool. So just having the conversation about what tools do we have in the classroom that we could use to measure. Maybe you have all the same desks, old style desks, where they could line them up and they could say we're, you know, 12, 15, whatever desks long in our room. Sure, or chairs. Something that's the same measure, that's a reasonable amount. And then also principle 7 kind of comes in, especially with children first starting, is that the unit that they choose sometimes leads to that fatigue piece. And that kind of goes back to this, would I measure a car with paper clips? The actual car? No. A picture of a car? Sure, that might be reasonable. In a magazine, I might use paper clips, but the real thing, that might take me forever. And the same thing with their feet. You know, they might say, well, we could just stand with our feet back to back and we could just take one step at a time and we could go to the end of the room. And that's not unreasonable, but their little feet may find that it gets kind of boring after about the 30th step. And then their step becomes a little bigger and a little bigger. And eventually they get to the end of the room, but we kind of lost track of the fact that it was supposed to be heel to toe, heel to toe, heel to toe. And they kind of call that fatigue. You know, inappropriate use of a tool just leads to fatigue in measuring, and we lose the accuracy because they just get tired of doing the process. So could it have worked? Sure, it could have, but it probably wouldn't be practical. So again, it's just letting them try it out, but then having the conversation so that when they start to do some measuring, they have some tools in their back pocket that they might fall back on and say, oh yeah, you know, we kind of did that once before and it didn't work. And paperclip, no, that's not a good idea. It might work for a book, but I don't think it'll work for going all the way down the hallway, that kind of thing. So things that are available in the school. Some of the often misconceptions that children have very, very early on in kindergarten, this would be a very typical one for them, that if I were to show them 2 strips that are exactly the same length, but put a bowl on top of it, some of your students would say that they are not the same length because what is hidden is actually not there in their mind. They believe that that is missing, and so therefore they are not the same pieces. So then again, it's a matter of we need to pick it up and say, so when we picked up the bowl, what did you see? Well, I saw it's there. So putting the bowl down actually didn't affect it. It just means we couldn't see it. So that's a very common misconception of children. Kind of goes with the little children when they're really young and they cover their eyes and you go peekaboo and they get all excited about it. Well, they think that if they covered their eyes and closed their eyes that you've gone away, right? It's just they can't see you. So that's basically what it comes down to. Another misconception is that I don't need to start at the same place when I'm finding comparative language of what's longer or shorter. I can just start anywhere. So often the students will look at this who misunderstand. They'll say the bottom line is longer because it's sticking out further. So then we just need to say to them, so if we were going to just really say, if these were 2 pieces of spaghetti and which one would give me the most spaghetti to eat, then I probably have to back that bottom one up in order to get it to the same starting point so that I can compare. So again, this is a very, very common misunderstanding. The next one that we have for you is also a common misunderstanding, but this isn't just for the young ones. This also goes right up into Div 2. And then for some of our junior high students, spatial, where they have real difficulty with spatial reasoning, they will make the same mistake. So when you ask them which line is longer, they will say green. And because the green is start at the same place, they check that, but this one sticks out further, therefore it's longer. And it's not longer, it's just that this one has been bent and some of the length of this one is obviously hidden from being compared to the straightness of the green. So having a piece of string, a pipe cleaner, where you can model this and just grab the 2 ends and say, what do you think would happen if we held on to the end of this one and just pulled on it? And then to show them that visually it does become longer. And then show them with a piece of string that's coiled around, right? It doesn't have to be always just straight lines, so that they understand that the length of it has to be measured in the same scenario. In other words, has to be straightened out, or both of them have to be curled or bent in exactly the same way for us to make a comparison that way. So when students are first going to non-standard units, one of the problems is the one I talked about, and that's the iteration. They pick something that's too small and they just get tired of it. So they get very, very fatigued by using it, and that leads to the inaccuracy. And again, that's something that they have to experience. We can tell them all we want, but they actually have to go through it and experience that, you know, this is going to take me forever. I'm not going to be able to get the right answer here. Another common one, and this goes right up again to junior high, is the misunderstanding that because, and this is a kindergarten grade 1 starting point, we actually start with number paths in kindergarten because we teach students how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We don't include 0 in that, and that's a good thing because we want them to learn how to count to 10. So this is what they learn. But when we measure, a measurement always includes a starting value of 0, and the purpose of the 0 is to tell us how big the unit on that measurement stick, or whatever it is we're using, is from 0 to the first unit. That's the purpose of the 0, is to tell us how far a unit is on whatever tool we're using. So for students who are just learning how to count to 10, they think they need to start at 1. So we need to always remind them that when we measure, when we count, just counting, we don't have a 0 finger. So we start at 1. But when we are measuring, we have to figure out how far it is to the first unit. So we always start at 0. So in this case, we'd back it up 1 unit. And then another conversation that generally shows up again in later years, for sure, in Div 2. And Div 3 is anything that goes past a whole number is assumed to be a half. It's just a blanket conversation that students will say. So in this case, you'll see that it's actually 7.4, but because it went over 7, most of them will say 7.5. And that will even happen with teens. Teens will say the same thing. What's past 7, it must be like 7.5. So then we say, well, let's count it out and really be sure that that's really what it is, so that you're being accurate. Okay. So because we're revisiting a lot of our outcomes right now, what we really want to do is just find other ways that we can start bringing back the same old things that we've been doing, just at the fresher look. So what I brought along this time was just some activities that we might do to get them to 10, still solidify the 5, but maybe it's just a slightly different activity so that they're not seeing the same old ones that they've had before. You could go on the internet, they're riddled with lots of these, but if we're starting to work to 10 frames now, I could have a coloring combination where it's 10 frames in there. I want them to subitize, right? Or I could use dice. These are just examples that I had. I could use ones that have just the dot patterns on them. So again, they have to look at the common dot pattern and whatever the rule is at the top. It says 6 is yellow, 8 is orange. So I start to recognize some of the different dot patterns. And again, if they have to count them initially, that's fine. That's not a big deal. This one here, let's learn to 5, also goes to 7, goes to 10. This one has a number of different possibilities. But again, if we just want to just revisit the 5, but now slice into 6 and 7, this free pick, when you come and get the slide deck, you can just click this on. You can download this one, and if you look at the very bottom of the screen, you will see all the different numbers there. So again, if you have some high flyers that are already at 10, this gives them an opportunity, even connecting the dots. We talk about 5 sides, right? So there's different ways that I can introduce the different numbers. I can bring in geometric shape in here. In this case, it's the pentagon. I can talk about tally marks. I can talk about counting on my fingers and so on. Another really good activity, and because it is a freebie, but I just need to remind you that because it's copyrighted in the sense that I can't share the document with you, but I can share where to get it. So if you click it on here, it's a free subscription. This is a wonderful little activity. It goes to 10. And so we actually bagged them. We did 2 sets, 1 to 5 and 1 to 10. And we just have the students go to carpet time, and they just pick out their patterns and they try and match them up accordingly, because we are working up to 10. In some cases, we even ask them to go find the domino that matched what they saw on the card, and the same thing with the dice. So it was just another way for them to engage in subitizing, quick recognition. Can I find that 1 and 2 gives me an answer of 3? I can count the dots. 1 and 2 gives me an answer of 3. Can I find the total in 3? So this is a wonderful little activity, and kids seem to really, really enjoy it. So just a thought for you. Again, just looking for some examples. A teacher shared this one with me recently. And this is one she said, I usually have popcorns on Fridays when I have the students. And so she uses 10 frames to play along with this video. The video has no words in it. It's just pictures of 10 frames. It shows them the number of popcorn pieces that they need to put down. And then at the end of each one, they get to eat it. And then they get a new 10 frame chart again. So it's just kind of a fun way of them going through and having a look at some things that they can do. One of the other things that have been quite helpful in classes is some teachers have been asking about centers. Maybe some carpet math talks that they could do, and then duplicate something along that line when they go back in their classrooms. So these are cards. These are called provocation cards for kindergarten. And so this is an example where we might use this in the carpet time talk as the model of what we're going to do when they go out to play or in a center area. And what happens here is in this one, it's saying how many lizards are left in the sand. And the activity goes as such. You roll a die. In this case, they rolled a 4. So they would take any four of the lizards and hide them inside the tunnel. And we just used, in some cases in farming communities, we just got a little plastic barn and we had a whole bunch of animals outside, and then they did the same thing and then they hid them in the barn, whatever works. And then the question is, how many are left in the sand? So we use that as the model. On the back of each one of these cards is a section for the teacher to, what do I do with this card? Like, what should I do? What are some things I could ask? So it has questions on the back for the teacher. It has some listen tos, look fors, if you're trying to do a quick assessment. It has learning spaces, even gives you some ideas, like you could use the barn, plastic animals, or bears, or whatever area that you live in. And then what you see at the bottom is kind of this notion of a yellow response is what I'm hearing the students say. And it's not wrong, but I'm not sure yet that they actually have all of the thinking correct. And that's what you'll see in here is what can you ask for further questions for clarification to nail whether or not assessment wise you're comfortable that they know what they've got, just that further prod. Green means I've got it. You heard what you wanted to hear, you know they've got it, we're ready to move on. So those are they're called provocation cards. They're from the kindergarten package. One of the other things that we've been using just recently in a lot of the workshops, teachers were saying, well, you know, I just need something new, refreshing. So I said, what about some number paths? So here are number paths. So we're working on 10. But again, they're supposed to know the words by sight. So I found a couple of number paths that have a couple of things on them. They've got the words, they've got the subitizing combination, and they've got the numbers at the top. And if you kind of look at the alternating colors, it also is odd numbers, even numbers. Even though they don't have to know that, it really kind of stands out for them. And they come in all different colors. You can find these by clicking on Sparklebox. I have it set right now to take you to these, and they come in a variety of different colors. What we did is we put them on 11 by 17 cardstock, like the ledger size cardstock. We ran, I think, 7 or 8 of them off on one sheet, and then we just laminated and cut them apart, and then kids could get different colors all the time. But it's a nice way, just a refreshing way for them to now sort of solidify their thinking for 10. And then the other piece that you could do with any one of these is you could have them go through dominoes and find another combination that would give me 10 or 9 or 8 or 7, other than the one that's showing here. And again, just letting them sort through them and find there's multiple possibilities that they can have and work from there. Now, if you want to, if you've got some high flyers that are ready to go beyond 10 and they've been counting past 10 already, there are some of these number paths that go to 20. So you can definitely grab some of them from there as well. Okay, so this sheet that you're seeing right now is in your file folder. So you'll have access to grabbing this and another one, everything I'm going to show you right now. So what we did in one of the classes that I was working in is we were wanting to check to see how they were doing with numbers to 10 on a number line. And so for some teachers, they said, I haven't actually introduced a number line. So that's okay. I mean, going back to even our number paths here, there's a good starting point. That's a way to introduce it and bring it about. But what we wanted to know is for those who had been doing this or rote counting really good, we just wanted to know where they were at. So you have these little cards that go to 10 in your folder already. So, and you also have some that go to 50 and some that go to 100. So again, if you've got high flyers, I'll show you how to do both. So initially what we did is if you were just trying to assess them at 5, then I would take out the 7 to 10. But if you are ready to go to 10, that's fine. They turn one number over. In this case, we're at 5. I turned over the number 4, and I put number 4 onto my number line if I was counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So do they have it in the right place? Do they know how to count to get to that 9? So that's really all it's doing. You can go one step further if they're well beyond that, and hopefully you've got some kids that are. You can turn over another one, and we ask them to put it in the right place on the number line. So I turned over a 1 and a 4. So 1 is here, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, I should have had the one over here. 2, 3, 4. And so I would have those, and then I could even ask them, what do you think goes in the middle? What do you think might go in the middle here that's hiding? And they could turn a card over and see if they could find where it goes or not. So here's one where we had 3 and 8 turned over. We had a student that was working on 10, and we just said, can you tell us, without giving them the cards, can you tell us some numbers that might go in between this? And again, it was just a matter of us seeing. We even asked them what number came in front of the one that you turned over. So it's just, do they know that number 1 to 10 really, really well is really what we're looking for. Now, if you have some high flyers and some that are maybe ready to go to 15, maybe they're ready to go to 20. This is one that we do use with the grade 1s as well. And we actually, and this will be another sheet that's in there as well. So again, you turn your number over and whichever the number is the smallest. So when you talk about comparative language, which was the smaller of the two numbers that you turned over? The smaller one always goes in the box. And that's where I'm going to start counting from. And then I start putting my other one. If you're only going to go to 20, you'll have way more lines than you need, but I put the other one back on the line here. And then we ask them questions like, can you tell me what came before the one you put in the box? Can you tell me what came right after the one that's in the box? Can you tell me what comes to after the one that's in the box? And then we said, can you tell us 3 numbers in between? So if they're astute, they already know that they've given you 2 numbers. And maybe there aren't 2 numbers, 3 numbers in between, but most of them there are. So again, this one you can use 1 to 20, there's 1 to 50, 1 to 30. You can differentiate it based on whatever your students are at. Also checking for understanding. Some teachers were asking for, do we have just something else that we can just see where they're at, especially for those who are maybe at 10 or maybe just already a little bit beyond 10. So these are sheets, you'll find them in your folder. They come from KTB Teachers. This is the 2009 version. It's really old and I've had it for a long time. It was a free version. I don't even know if they make it anymore. But what I did is I put it in plastic pouches. So just a protection cover, and then the kids use dry markers and then they just filled in whatever. So there's a variety of different sheets there. It's not just a one sheet, it's a whole bunch of different ones. And you can absolutely differentiate them based on the levels of the children. So if you have some who are definitely able to count up to 10 right now, they can use those sheets. If some need to go smaller, then you can just differentiate them based on that. So geometry was the other piece. We'd already done some 2D shapes and identifying them. We'd already done some of that earlier in the year. This is an activity which I'm very selective if I'm going to go buy something or see something, but this is one that I really, really liked. It's a purchase that you would have to make. I think it was $2. There's 8 different cards, and the children would play in groups of 2 or 3, whatever you want. Just take a paper clip and they spin it, and whatever shape it lands on, they go put their marker where they find that shape on here. And with some of the students, they'll be very astute to realizing that some of the shapes have more than one possibility. So for example, in the grandfather clock, they have the hexagon or the octagon in there, but they also have a circle in there, right? So they can choose whichever one they want to put on it. But every card that's in the pack is a different card. So you've got lots of opportunities then for the kids to play and just to see the shapes that they're looking for. Okay, so just a couple of sites that I would like to just point out to you that would be helpful. I'm going to just put this one, I'm going to put this one in the chat box for you. If you haven't already, it's not the first time that we've come here, but if you haven't already used or marked this one, earmark this one for yourself. Okay, it's in the chat box right now. K5 is a great place for teachers because the materials that's there is user-friendly and it's readily done. Like there is nothing that needs to be done to it. It's from the UK, so you can use everything in there because it'll be all metric then as well. What you cannot use though are the money because it'll be in their currency, right? So that's the only piece that you have there. But when you go in and you look at some of the pieces that are here, they really do offer you some quick formatives that you could use right away as an assessment piece. I'm not looking for worksheets, I'm looking more for what are some assessments that you could use. So you have, when you click on kindergarten, you have all of these different opportunities that you can go into, but they are really user-friendly for the materials that we need. So I would earmark that site because it's a great site, it really is. I'm quite impressed with what they have. Making Math Moments, again, you can click this one on, but this comes from John Orr and Kyle Pierce, and they do a lot of work. Well, actually, I'll go into this one because it's Subitizing that I picked out for you. And they do a lot of work for workshops just after schools. A lot of them are for free if you've never seen them before. They have a free site blog that you can go into, lots of free goodies. I'll put this one in the chat box. But this one I liked because I had seen it before, and it's a great one for Subitizing. So if you're just looking for something different for Subitizing, then by all means, grab from here. A lot of it is new. They get into talks about what do you see, and some of them will go 1, 2, 3, 4, but some children will say, I see 4, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. So what is their thinking? How did they get to 7? Not everybody's going to see the same thing. And that's a good one for any grade, actually. Cube for Teachers is from the Ontario Teachers Federation. They have put together a great site for the teachers, and a lot of their grade 1 is now our kindergarten. So I have linked for you a lot of the resources from there, and you'll see that they use K5 as well. That would be very helpful for the time that we're sliding into mastering the learner outcome right now. So there's quite a bit of stuff in here that will be helpful. Ignore the fact that it says grade 1 because it's very much our parts. Okay, the other pieces that I wanted to share with you, and you may have these in your school already and know about them or not know about them. If you are looking for some resources, I do like fundamentals because it says the word fun in it. That's a Q. Everything is outcome based. And I should have had another one in here. There's a K1 book as well. But the K1 1-2 book fits very well for our new kindergarten curriculum. And every item that is in these books is a game. It's a very simple game, always in black and white. Don't need to fancy anything. Usually a paper clip, something simple like that, but it's always outcome based in a game format. So if I'm not wanting to give them the typical join the lines, mark to this or whatever, but still want to get my outcome covered and really mastered in a fun way, these are a great system. So they go all the way up to grade 6. Great little series. They come from Origo. The other one is open-ended questions. So some people have been asking for, I'm okay with connect the dots and just counting, but I like my kids to think a little bit more outside the box. So these open-ended questions are written by Strand. So they're still on the old system, but they're outcome-based, doesn't matter. And they cover kindergarten to grade 3 in number book, kindergarten to grade 3 in geometry, kindergarten in measurement, like all the same. So each section of the book is tailored to that grade. And they start with a very simple open-ended question, and then it gets progressively harder. So it could be something that you would use as a morning conversation for carpet time. It could be something you put into a number conversation. It could be something you do with time. They're all different topics. They're very good, and they come from Rubicon. And this is the book that I took the information for measurement on. If you are looking for a person, this is not for a student, but you personally are looking for something just as a good book for yourself, I go to this as kind of a little bit of a Bible that I carry along with me because it covers every different outcome we could possibly cover in math to grade 8. And it goes back first and says, okay, let's just review what are some of the pitfalls of just talking about, like we did today, measurement, just as a quick review for us as the teacher. So it's really written for us, the teacher. They give you ideas of how you might unpack it. They also give you ideas of what a student exemplar's work looks like and what's typical of that grade, what's not typical of that grade. In other words, a student who's not yet meeting the understanding, or a student who's gone well beyond in that grade. So it's a lovely book. It's not a little book. It's about a 600-page book. She has a number of different ones. This is the 3rd edition. So this is the most recent one. I think it came out in 2016-17. Okay, I also put this into your folders, not in anyone's request, but I just wanted to, our year at a glance is very detailed. Some people were just saying, I just need a quick picture of where we're at. And so we have a scope and sequence that was developed by the ERLC, and that's also in your folder now. So this is just the first page for number. And what you're seeing is there's no detail here. All we're asking for is, what am I doing in number and operations? How does it go to the next grade? And in yellow, just like we did before, if it's new, we highlighted it in yellow. So it's just a very fast one. So I put geometry in there, I put measurement in there, I put patterns in there. I didn't put stats or anything like that in there because that doesn't affect you in this particular grade. So you do find those in your folder already. Okay. So that kind of gets us to the end. I don't know, Carol, did you have any questions or did you have any things that you were looking for, or how are things going in general? I'll stop our recording here.